Good morning, everyone. All right, we're continuing what we began yesterday, and that is talking about the holiday of forgiveness, the holiday of Yom Kippur, which was given to the Jewish people by God, that once every year, everybody gets automatically forgiven for all their sins, sort of. Okay, so first of all, we have to understand what are sins and what does it mean to be forgiven for sins. Very important, very important. I think one of the basic factors of human existence is guilt. I'm a very big fan of Professor Viktor Frankl. I read a lot of things of Viktor Frankl, and he was a very great psychiatrist. The very great psychiatrist, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, said that he was the only one of all the psychiatrists that got it right. That's what he said. The only one that got it right. What is a human being, and what do you have to do with the healing a human being, etc. All the others are manipulations that may be helpful, but he got the essence of what a person is. And the essence of everybody is good, according to what he said. But there are major problems in the world, in life, and that he called it tragic triad. And one of them is death, and one of them is suffering. Everybody has to meet these things. And the third one is guilt. It seems that guilt is as much as an unavoidable problem, if you want to call it, in humanity, as death and suffering is. And the same way that you can make something good out of both of those, death and suffering, as also something good can be found in guilt. In guilt. So what's good in death is that there's they call it a deadline. A deadline. In other words, you know that you have to get things done. You can't just let things go. Life has got a limit. And even though that everything you do is eternal, all the good deeds that you do are eternal. He's not talking about it in religious terms at all. He's just talking about it factual. When a person does something good, it's eternal, but nevertheless, there is an amount of time you have to do these things. So you have to get things done. That's death. And so the good of suffering is that it makes a person realize that he's not the boss of the world, that there are principles involved in life which are higher and more eternal. It brings you to your soul. It brings you to your soul. Sometimes a person in times of suffering, suffering is bad, there's no doubt about it. But the way that there's something good can be the result from bad, just like death is bad. And the same thing, when a person suffers, so he has to come to some realization that maybe there's a soul inside of him, that's his essence, that is not suffering. There's a him, there's a person that is suffering. That person itself is eternal. So a person come to a higher realization of what reality is. But the third thing, and that's what we're talking about here, is guilt. And the good thing about guilt is responsibility. Everybody is born with responsibility. And the feeling of guilt is maybe I haven't filled my responsibility. Maybe I haven't responsibility. If there's no responsibility, like all the the leftists and these people, they want to say the woke people, we got no responsibility. Life is just but a dream. Just row your boat down the stream. You can't do anything wrong. You can't do anything with this. And so then there's no responsibility. So then maybe you can be happy like a child. Little children, they have no responsibility. But that's not mature, and that's not real. And the fact is, everybody does have responsibility, but along with responsibility is also guilt. Guilt. Maybe I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Right? It pushes you, because if there's no guilt, then you feel, okay, so I didn't do what I want. Big deal. I didn't do what I'm supposed to do. So what? No one's going to catch me. I can do what I want. So if you want to call it the severe side of responsibility, is that you feel an obligation to do something in the world, and that maybe you didn't feel. That's what guilt is. That's what guilt is. So, and the fact of the matter is everybody does have responsibility. That God has created us for a purpose. We're not just here like dogs and cats or whatever, and just fish or something. We just do. There's no bad. There's no good. In fact, there is bad and good, and that's what the Torah is given for. So the Torah is given the guidelines of what's right and what's wrong. And you can do what's right for your responsibility. We're not talking here about reward and punishment. We're not talking about that God is going to punish. We're talking about being who you really are. Being who you really are. I once heard an example. I think it's a pretty good example that somebody did a favor for a king. So the king put this man in the treasure house and he gave him a bunch of bags. He said, you can fill up all these bags with as much treasure as you want. But the person was very, very simple, a very, very simple person. It ended up that he saw the king's daughter fall into the lake and he jumped in and saved her or threw her a rope or something. So the king closed the doors with all his treasures. And the man went down there and he said, well, I'm down here, you got a shovel. You can shovel up. He said, no, shovel all the riches into the bags. And he looked around, he saw there's no one here to observe me if I'm working or not. I don't have to work. I can just take it easy. So he just sat there for a while and, went to sleep. Here we go. Let's do this. Here we go. Then went to sleep. And then afterwards, he saw a nice feather or something, a nice peacock feather. And he was sat there for a while. And then, they opened it up like an hour later. And he said, well, those fools, they didn't even observe me. I didn't do anything the whole time. So, but the fact is that there was a treasure there. The same thing is there's a treasure of meaning in the world. And that if we know what to do, so according to Viktor Frankl, you follow your conscience, which we also have to follow the conscience. But the Torah directs your conscience, tells you what's objectively good and bad. Okay, so what if a person went against his conscience? He went against the Torah. He went against what's right and wrong. He went against his responsibility, his obligation to himself and the world. So he's guilty. Here we're talking, because this is Judaism, so we're talking about you went against the Torah. A person went against the Torah, did something bad. So what do you do when you go against the Torah? Because you're going against God. What can you do? So he says there's a day which is called Yom Kippur, and that day brings forgiveness. So the Rebbe asked the question, how can you possibly do a thing like that? How can you get forgiven for that? First of all, let's not forget. Let's not forget. Here is charity box, coin, and charity brings the future redemption. So it shouldn't be future, it should be right now. Charity saves from all bad things. Somebody is in a bad situation, give charity. Say, I'm giving charity, God, that this person should be healthy. This person should be married. This person should be rich. This person should be this. I'm giving charity. The Mashiach should come now and fix everybody's problems. Okay, so the Rebbe said, So the Rebbe said last time, it's like two people that are standing back to back. There are infinite distance between them, but as soon as you turn around, the other person reacts and he turns around. The same thing, that's what tshuva is. Tshuva means to return. God is creating everybody. Everyone that's alive, it means that God is creating them. It means that they've got a chance. It means that God loves them in some way. But we have to turn around and see this love. That's what tshuva is. Tshuva means to turn around. Return face to face. Simple. That's what happens on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur encourages us. Yom Kippur is the day that, so to speak, God turns first to us, lets us know it's possible. Okay, so the Rebbe said, how can we do this? How can we do this? Now, this is especially talking about Jews, This is advice for Jews. This is a book for Jews, right? But if the Jews get it together, the non-Jews are not as stupid as Jews are. Jews can really, really be stupid. I mean, Jews really, the Torah tells us, Torah is not ashamed. God took the Jews out of Egypt, gave them bread from heaven, appeared on Mount Sinai. Everybody felt that the Creator was speaking to them. Their souls jumped out of their bodies. And what did God say to them? Don't worship idols. What did they do 40 days later? They worshiped idols. They worshiped the golden calf. That's pretty stupid. And then they tried to excuse it, like Adam did. Right? Adam was essentially a Jew. He wasn't officially a Jew, but a Jew is a person that his whole life is devoted only to doing what God wants. A Jew is just a servant of God. That's what a Jew is. That's ideally what a Jew is. So Adam sort of flubbed it, and then 2,000 years later came Abraham, and Abraham was the first one to actually manifest this thing, and he passed it down to all of us to serve God. What if you don't serve God? What if you turn your back on God? What if you're stupid? So it says, then you just have to turn around. Well, the non-Jews are not so stupid. If the God would have taken the non-Jews out of Egypt and gave them all these things, they probably would have done what it said. They wouldn't have worshipped idols. Probably. I mean, take things simply. But Jews, the Jews are in a different way, in a deeper way, they're made in the image of God. The Jews are called the sons of God. So a son, he thinks he's the king, right? One day I'm going to be the king. So maybe it's now I'll be the king. Okay. So nevertheless, when the Jewish people get it right, then everybody's going to get it right. So the Jewish people, we have a thing called Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the day when God turns his face to us. Okay. So now we have to turn our face to God. How are we supposed to do this in the rest of the year? Says the Rebbe, that's what the Torah is for. That's what the Torah is for. That's where we are. We're at right now. How can it possibly be that this could be said in a person's mind that we can actually turn around to God and that God will turn to us? God is infinite. We're finite. How can this be? Maybe it's a little bit better. The better solution is just to give up. Give up. Person did sins. I got a better idea. Just say there's no such thing as sins. I ate not kosher food, so I stole money. So what? Case sarah, whatever happened, happened. That's it. There's no bad and there's no good. Okay, but that's one way of going through life, but it's not true. And eventually the truth hits you in the face. A person realizes I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Life was totally meaningless. Right? Maybe I made up the meaning, but there was no absolute meaningless. There was no absolute meaning. So if you don't do absolute meaning, then your life is, semi-absolute meaningless. You had a chance to do what the creator of the universe wants you to do. You've loved it. Okay. So now says the Rebbe, how are we going to return our face back to God if we didn't? So he says, therefore God gave the Torah. God gave the Torah, and we learned a lot of sentences over there that says that the Torah is more important than anything. The Torah is more important than the commandments, unless it's a commandment that nobody else can do. But if you have a chance to do Torah or a commandment that someone else can do, Torah is the most important. The essence of Torah is deep attachment to God. That's the thing of tshuva. Okay, so learning Torah the proper way, that's also the idea of tshuva. So now we have to appreciate a lot of things. One of them is what is the Torah? What is the Torah? This is, of course, totally overlooked. This is the big problem of the Jewish people. This is the big problem. What is the Torah? What is the Torah? Right? Someone once wrote me, some people write things to me, on Facebook, whatever. And they wrote that, you'll probably say that I'm a self-hating Jew. That's what this person wrote. And I wrote, that's not so. To you, Judaism is just as important to you as it is to me. The problem is you don't know what the definition of a Jew is. The definition of a Jew is according to the Torah. The Torah decided there is such a thing as Jews. And the Torah defined what a Jew is. And then the Torah told us what a Jew has to do. That's the commandments of the Torah. But one of the commandments of the Torah is just learn Torah. Okay, so by learning Torah, you turn your face back to God. Because what is the Torah? The Torah is understanding. You're taking God into your mind, okay. Okay. It means like this. It says, it is written. Because it is written, okay, Shema Yisrael. You ever see the Shema Yisrael prayer? The Shema Yisrael prayer says, listen, Jews, God is our God, God is one. You should love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your might. And it should be these words that I am saying on your heart. And you should speak in them when you sit in your house, and when you walk in the road, and when you go down, when you sleep, and when you wake up in the morning. Okay, so what is it talking about? These words should be on your heart. These words should be on your heart. Now, what does it mean? So should we translate it? Should we bring a thing? Anyway, okay, want to have a look. Here, let's have Shema Yisrael. Let's have a Shema. Let's see if we do this. Let's not hope we don't get lost over here. 1 minute. Can we do it? Here we go. Excuse me. Here we go. Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Let's see if we can do this. Hope I don't lose this whole thing. No, it doesn't not working. Here, you know what? Let's do it a different way. Here, one second. I want to bring the sentence just so that we see what it is. It's a sentence in the book of Deuteronomy, right in the beginning of Et Hanan. Where is this? Over here. Here we go. Here we go. I just want to show you the sentence because that's what it depends on. Over here. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. After the 10 Commandments. Here it is. Shema Yisrael. It is Dvorim Vav Daled. Devorim Vav Daled. Huh? No, not good, not good. This. Vav Daled. Okay, let's see if it works. No, okay, I should have said. Just taking up the time for nothing. Okay. There we go. Okay, let's try it. Here we go. There we go. Good. What's going on? Why? That's looks. Yeah, that's gonna be. Here we go. What's going on? Why doesn't this work for me, huh? Why doesn't this work? That's right. It should be. Here we go. I gotta have this non-Jewish thing. Okay, anyway, here we go. All right. Better. I don't like to do this, but here we go. Ready? Here we go. All right. It's good enough for this. Listen, Jews. God is our God. God is one. Okay. Well, I'm going to skip this. Here we go. Forget this. Forget it. Here we go. Let's go back to where we are. So we say the motto of Judaism is: listen, Jews. God is our God. God is one. Right? You should love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your might. And these words should be on your heart, and you should speak in them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, etc. Okay, which words is it talking about? These words should be on your, which words? Or at first glance, these words that we're talking about, that you should love God with all of your heart and all of your might and all of your soul and all of your might, and these words should be on your heart all the time. It's talking about the words you just said, the words that we said in Kriya Shema. The Allah then, and this is talking about these words, Shema Yisrael. You should say the word Shema Yisrael. But really, the fact is not so. Really, the commandment of saying Shema Yisrael it is a commandment, yes, but it's only twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. That's what we say when you walk, when you wake up, and when you lay down, and not the whole day. How can it say that these words should be, that these words you should speak when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road all the time? Really, it should say the last two words over there. It says you should say Shema Yisrael when you lay down in your bed in the nighttime, and when you wake up in the morning, the time when people lay down and when they wake up. That's the commandment, to say Shema Yisrael. But it doesn't say that. It says, in addition to saying when you lay down, when you wake, you should say it when you're sitting in your house, when you're walking on the road, all the time. The Mashma Kol Hayom, this implies that the whole day you should be saying these words, and also the whole night, all the time. You should never stop whether you're sitting in your house, whether you're walking on the road. So what is the sentence talking about? So the Rebbe says, well, that's why you have to have commentary on the Torah. The fact of the matter is that what it says: listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. You should love God with all of your heart, your soul, your might, and you should say these words constantly. This is talking about the words of Torah. We're supposed to be saying the words of Torah constantly. In Cain, if so, Tzarich Lav, we have to understand, why does it say these words? It seems that it's clearly referring to these words, the words that we just said about loving God with all of your heart. So it seems that in one little sentence, the motto of Judaism, there's already a big contradiction. You figure a motto would be clear. Huh? A motto of a country should be clear, whatever the country is, what. The motto should be clear. Here, even the motto of Judaism is already unclear. What is it unclear? It says you should love God with all of your heart, with all of your might, and your soul and all of your might. And you should say over and over these words. Which words? The words we just finished saying. Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. You should love God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all your might. Say that over and over again. Right? Say it over. But the fact is, that's not so. You're supposed to say those words, Shema Yisrael, only in the morning and the evening. That's the obligation. That's what it says the whole day, all the time. That's talking about all the rest of the Torah, including this. All the rest of it. Says, but if so, that's a contradiction. That clearly it says you're just supposed to say these words, the words of Shema, not all the words of the Torah. That's what the rabbis learn. So how does it fit in together? The answer is that the word echad, that it says when God is one, shehu levado, it means that God is alone. When we say that God is one, it means there's nothing else than God. There's no number two. There's not God and the world, God and the creation. The God is alone in the heavens and the earth and in the four directions of the world, just like he was before the world was created. We've talked about this a lot of times. God created the world from nothing. So the world is still made from nothing, just made of, a billion nothings. So the world is a big miracle. God is making it all the time from nothing. So the basic building block of the world is nothing. So the world is really nothing. So it doesn't really take up any, disturb God, so to speak. Of course, we can't understand this. This makes no sense whatsoever. This is above sense. Sense is the thing that God created. You can't understand what it means. There was no, before consciousness, before spiritual, there's no kind. But nevertheless, that's the fact. We just finished saying that before. So we have to remember that God is one. What does it mean that God is one? That our very existence is an amazing miracle. And that God is creating us and the responsibility that we have and the free will that we've got and the world that we live in. It's all one totally incomprehensible meaning, the miracle. Like it says, I am God, I never changed. Mishum the kula kamei, everything in front of God is like nothing. So in other words, God is creating you right now. Do you feel you're being created? I don't feel I'm being created. Not only that, it's impossible to feel you're being created. Impossible. Impossible. It's a thing that's totally impossible to feel that we're being created. Jews would go to the Holy Temple, they would feel a little bit. They would feel a little bit that there's a creator. In the Holy of Holies, they felt it totally, but nobody could go into the Holy of Holies, only the high priest. That's what we're going to learn about Yom Kippur. If so, it comes out that all of creation doesn't take up any place by God at all. That's why we say between Shema Yisrael, that listen, Jews, God is our God and God is one, and you should love God. There's a sentence that's called Baruch Shem Kavod Malchutul Olam Vaed. We stick a sentence in there. Blessed is the name of the glory of the kingship of God forever and forever. This is how God brings his oneness down into the world. There's a whole process by which God creates the world, how he conceals himself. It should be drawn down. It says his name of the glory of his kingship forever and forever, lower and lower and lower levels of reality that God makes. That's what it says, Malchutcha, God, your kingship is the kingship of all the worlds. That from your kingship, God, is created all of the worlds from nothing to something. Like we say that God is Yachid, he is alone. Chei Olamim, for God to create the worlds, Melech, he's a king. This is in one of our prayers in Bruch She'amar. The Ha'akula Kameka Lo Chashiv, because everything in front of God is nothing. This world is an amazing, amazing miracle. God really, really cares about the world. He creates it all the time. And he creates time. The whole thing is tremendous. The world is tremendously important to God. But it in itself doesn't really exist, only because God is creating it. So everything in front of God is really considered to be like nothing. In front of God, everything is nothing. But when it comes down to God's kingship in the world, Hu Shechinat Uso. This is God's dwelling, indwelling of His power, Hashechunat, which is in the lower worlds, by means of river above Simsumim, by means of many, many contractions and articulations and concealments and etc. So God nigla kavod malchuto, then in the world is only revealed God's glory. Okay, now the Rebbe is explaining something. This is anatomy book. We're learning now anatomy, right? You learn anatomy, and if you go and get a book on anatomy, you learn where the heart is, where the lungs are, right? That's the way things are. That's the way things are. A person is born, and a person is born. He doesn't have a neck like a giraffe, and he doesn't have a tail like whatever is like an alligator. He just doesn't have it. That's the way God made things. That's the way He made it. Here the Rebbe is talking about anatomy. This is the way God made the world. Why He made the world? What's the point of it? What's this? That's a different thing. That's different. That the Chasidus will discuss this. Here we're just learning about anatomy. You can't look at an anatomy book and say, I disagree with this. I don't think that the brain is in the head. I think that the brain is in people's legs. And what's the proof? I stubbed my toe and I felt pain. So it must be that the brain is in the... That's stupid to say something like that. The way that human being is there's anatomy. The Rebbe is talking about the anatomy of the world. In order for God to relate, to create, and to interact with this world, so God made a world, and He's making it all the time. And this world, that's only the external, but the inside, the inner organs, the inner anatomy of the world, that's all these Kabbalah ideas that we're talking about, God's kingship and the angels with the worlds, with this. The only difference is when you learn an anatomy book, so the organs that you learn about are not, they're as real as the person you see, as real. Here, these upper worlds are more real than our world. The upper worlds are more godly. They're less, deceptive than this physical world. This physical world really gives the impression that there is no God. The upper worlds are clear that there is God. That's why all the angels are burning up. They're going crazy. So it says, good, the angels are going crazy. The angels are burning up. All of these upper worlds are more real than we are. You think you're real? You're right, you're real. But your reality is a very, very, very dimmed down reality. And the upper worlds are more real. That's why all these religions go crazy for going to heaven, because heaven is more real, it's more truth than in this world. So, but when we think that all of the heavens and all of these different levels are just creations, they're just creations. So therefore, when we think about this, and that God is creating it all for free, and He's creating me, and He's creating us, then we'll come to love God. And that's what it says. That's the motto of Judaism. Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. And what does it mean that He's one? That He's creating us. So, well, that's pretty big. He says, not only is He creating us, He's creating the upper worlds, the spiritual worlds. They're more real than we are. And there's worlds above that, but there's Bria, there's Yetzirah, there's Atzilus. Therefore, we come to realize that how much God loves us, that He's creating us for free. He's giving us everything we have, then we love God. That's what's called the arousal of the heart. Love, and we surrender ourselves to Him. Mamish. Liot nafsho nichlelas ubatela b'metzius, to be totally united with God's oneness. Really, the kula kameh, because everything in front of God is like nothing. Like these rock and roll stars. You get the people come close to a rock and roll star, they go crazy, they go berserk. I can't believe it. I'm standing in the same room. This big star, once I met, some other famous person. It's a big deal, right? It's a really big thing. Here, God is more, popular, powerful than a movie star, than the smarter than the biggest professor. And He's creating us. He's infinitely close to us. When a person realizes this, so he comes to love. But that's what it means. We say that you should listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one, and you should love. That's the next sentence. You should love. That this, from the level of feeling God's oneness, is coming to loving God. Root of the libel, your heart all of a sudden gets aroused. The nefesh adam, in the heart of a person. 1 second, excuse me. 1 second, here's somebody waiting. Mr. Hammer, here you go. So that's the motto of Judaism. Listen, Jews. God, listen means understand. Understand, Jews. God is our God. God is one. What does it mean that God is one? that the entire creation is a big miracle. God is creating it from nothing. Everything in the world is being created constantly from absolutely nothing. The basic building block of the world is nothing. I'm nothing. You're nothing. Everything is nothing. The video is nothing. Everything is nothing. And so how is it here? Because God is creating it. So therefore, in God's eyes, everything is tremendously important. When you realize that God is creating you right now from love, then you reciprocate. You feel a great love for God. That's what it says when we say Shema Yisrael, that God is one, and you come to love God, that when you realize that God is one, then you have a tremendous love of God. How do we express this love of God? Now, this is especially for the Jewish people here. This is relevant to everybody, but the Jewish people, they respond to this love. How? You can say thank you, but the Jews have a special way of saying thank you, and that is by learning the Torah. Like it says, Ote Orka Salma, that God clothes himself like in a garment of light. That's the light of the Torah. Now, you can say thank you, God, and treat God like as a person, because God is sort of like a person. I mean, God does listen to our prayers. But if you want to thank God in God's terms, let's say a French man does a favor for you, and you say to him, spasiba, you speak to him in Russian, doesn't understand what you're talking about. You say, thank you, gracias, it doesn't understand what you're talking about. You say, merci, oh, yes, I understand, right? You're talking to me. The same thing with God. You want to say thanks to God. Good, God understands everything. But you want to say thanks to God in God's language, that's only for the Jews. The Jews, by means of the Torah, everyone in the world has to thank God. It's a positive thing. It's a healthy thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's an obligation for everybody to thank God. Thank God constantly. But you want to thank God in God's language. That's the Torah. And the Torah is not just God's language. The Torah is God's mind. The Torah is God's will. Ota Kodesh Baruch Hu. Therefore, it says God, he puts on a garment of light. Ein Sof, the infinite one, that's the Torah. So even though it seems that the Torah is talking about very, very mundane things, and the Torah is just a book in the library like every other book, but the fact of the matter is, it is not every other book. It is the revelation of God that God gave on Mount Sinai to 3 million people, and their souls jumped out of their bodies. And the Jews have been repeating the story for the last 3,300 years. So it could be that the Jews are just like the most gullible nation in the world, and that's our how do you say, our claim to fame, is that we're the stupidest nation that's ever been. We passed down this ridiculous story for 3,300 years, and we actually believe this nonsense that God himself appeared to us. But nevertheless, the story is continued. No, right? Nobody says, hey, this is, there's been a lot of Jews that say, hey, this is ridiculous. There's no such thing. There's always Jews that have been saying that. But there's always been a handful of Jews, whatever, they say not less than 600,000. I don't know if that's true. That say, hey, the story is true. How do you know it's true? Because my father told me it was true, and his father told him it was true, and his father told him it was true. That's the Torah. It's not, we're not trying to verify the Torah over here. We're trying to verify the Torah. The essence of the Torah is faith in God. We're not trying to say that the Torah is true and that the Torah is valid and the Torah is, we're trying to say the Torah is the will and the wisdom of God. And when you say words, a Jew, when a non-Jew does it, it doesn't do the same thing. When a Jew says the words of the Torah, then that causes a unification. It causes unification. It draws, God turns his face to us and we turn our face to him, because the word for face in Hebrew is also inside. Panim is inside. And the inside of God is the Torah. The outside of God is the world. God created the world from his words. That's what it said. The Torah is also God's words. But it says the Torah is like God's thought. It's the inner words. That's why when God spoke the words of the Torah, everybody's souls jumped out of their body, because it was like they were going inside of God. They were inside of the Holy of Holies, so to speak. Okay, I'll say that's the idea of Yom Kippur. We'll see. That's the Holy of Holies. I'll say Ne'emar. By the way, when did God give the Torah? We're going to have now the holiday of Shavuot. God said the 10 Commandments. Shavuot. It's going to be another, 20 days or something. The holiday, the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. When God gave the Torah, 3,300 whatever years ago, just 90 days after the Jews got out of Egypt, he gave them the Torah, right? and he gave them all the Torah. Let's say that. But when God gave them the Torah, so the Torah is from God's essence. And since then, the Torah has been revealed. The Torah was always there, but it was revealed in the world so that we now, by saying the words of Torah, just the words of Torah can be attached to the essence of God. And this it says in the prophecy of King David, of Daniel. It says, Levushe Ktlag Chiver. It says his garments, the garments of God. We said the garments of God of the Torah. Daniel saw, it says, the garments of God. He saw a vision of God. He said his garments were Ktlag Chiver. This is in Aramaic. Most of Daniel is in Aramaic. It is like white snow. Because the beginning of creation of snow comes from water, and water coagulates, it freezes, and it becomes snow. And after that, kishenifsha, when it melts, it goes back to be water again. So it is also havias levush is the garment of the Torah. The Torah comes from water, which this is God's the upper water. Remember, in the second day of creation, God divided it between the upper waters and the lower waters. Well, the upper water, that's God's essence, wisdom, so to speak, God's life force, Elah. Like it says, Chachim b'lo b'chachmi yadiyah, that God is wise, but it's no sort of wisdom that we can relate to. That's where our wisdom comes from. Wisdom is also translated in Hebrew. The word for wisdom is also translated faith. It's above understanding. There's Chachma and Bina. Bina is understanding. And the Chachma is above understanding. So that's like the life force of God. From this infinite life force of God is drawn down into the physical Torah in front of us. That has revealed God's wisdom and God's will. That's what it means. It's like snow. It coagulated. It became material, like a book in the library. But the fact is, it still is the wisdom of the essence of God. That's what it says, Chachma Barosh, Chachma B'sof. That's what it says, that wisdom is in the beginning and wisdom is in the end. Wisdom is the beginning. That's the source of the Torah. And wisdom is at the end. That's how, after the Torah is frozen, so to speak, and it comes down into the world. Remember we learned about the Rakia? Remember we learned about that? About the last week, Tifta the Rakia, the heavenly court. We learned something like the same thing. Hine, behold, Katib, it is written, this is also in the prophecy of Daniel, Sar Reshe Ka'amar Nake. It says that the hairs of his head are like wool that is white. Eluhain, these are hamshachas, the hairs of God. These are the laws that come down from the Torah. Right? God has hairs on it. So what type of hairs does God have? Right? That's the laws of the Torah. Like it says, Kavotzatav Talim. It's a sentence in Mishlei, Proverbs. It says that the Talim, it says that there's the hairs. Okay. Anyway, they translate it over there that it says it's talking about the Torah in Mishlei, and it's so dear and it's so wonderful. The Torah is so precious, and that you should embrace even all the details of it. It says Tili Tilim Shalalachas. There's laws, mountains and mountains of laws. There are all these mountains of laws. That's what's called the hairs of God. These are drawing down from these hairs of God, which are rays of godliness coming into the world. By means of this, it says, comes out, niflotecha o machshavotecha aleinu, to us. So here we have Jewish people putting on these boxes on their arms and on their head, and this is pure godliness. Is there anything more ridiculous than that? I mean, God creates the world, and you want to say that God is found in these little boxes that are on your head and on your head? So the answer to that is you're right. It makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. How can this possibly be? But it's true. That it's true. I go out every day. I put tefillin on people for about a half an hour. Since this war started in October, I go every day. I put this public place. So a lot of people say, I ask them, why we put on tefillin? And people say, no, why? I said, well, Jews have been putting on tefillin, for over 3,300 years. You know why they're doing it? And the person said, no, I don't know why. And I said, they also don't know why. Nobody knows why. Everybody just knows that somehow or other, this is what God said to do. And even non-religious people put it on. They don't do it to get a reward or to avoid punishment or something. God said to do it. Right? And they don't believe in God. But they feel inside that somehow this is a good thing. It's a Jewish thing, not a religious thing. They're not doing it, to be part of the group or because it's our heritage or anything. They have absolutely no idea why they're doing it. They just know that it's just something in this world that's purely good. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. I'm telling you, I put the tefillin sometimes on people, but on people they don't even know how to put on. They don't know the blessing. They don't know what to do. Okay, I'll put on tefillin. They have no reason to do it. Sometimes their friends even laugh at them. What are you doing? You put it on. Yeah, why are you doing it? I don't know. Then the friends say, okay, I'll do it too. Sometimes I say to people, listen, God creates us and he gives us everything, gives us our eyes and our ears and our mouths, he gives us our life. Even if we do all the sins in the world, God gives us to us for nothing, for free. So we should do something for him for nothing, for free. People do it. They'll do it. That's what it means. The commandments are pure godliness, and we have absolutely no idea, and we can't have any idea what God is. We know what God does, right? Even the angels don't know what God is. The angels, they're all burning up. They're going crazy. There's no comparison to God whatsoever. That this is King David. That's King David's prayers, the praises of God. Of God, there's no comparison to you. I will talk about you, your greatness, your wonders, and your thoughts. You cannot possibly understand. That's talking about learning the Torah. That the Torah is in the physical world. This is that King David, with all of his problems, used to sit up in the nighttime, learn Torah. He used to drowse off a little bit, and he had this harp over his head that would wake him up, and then he would sit and learn Torah the whole night. Because when you learn Torah, Jew learning Torah, there's tremendous accomplishment, tremendous results when you learn Torah. And we don't see it, we don't feel it, but it is. That's what we have to have faith. We can't possibly fathom how amazing the Torah is, that from the Torah comes all of these levels, spiritual levels, lower and lower, lower levels, until finally it comes down to the commandments, there's physical commandments in the world, infinitely, infinitely great. There's no comparison to God whatsoever. And this, we're going to talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. We're going to learn that this is the idea of the Torah that was given. When was the Torah given? Yom Kippur. That's when God gave the second tablets. The first tablets were given on Shavuot. The second tablets were given on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the day that God really gave the tablets that are in the Holy Temple. The first tablets are also there, but the tablets that are in the Holy Temple, that's the second tablets, the ones that weren't broken. That's what the high priest went into the Holy Holies every year on Yom Kippur. That's this holiday. That's what brings forgiveness, and that's what we're going to talk about, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's do the Yom Yom. And the Devar Malchut, I'm sorry.